A billionaire's son is screaming uncontrollably on a plane. First class. Every head turns. Every camera comes out. His father, one of the most powerful CEOs in the world, demands control. Make it stop. Money has always worked before. Then people notice her. A quiet black girl in economy. Worn sneakers. No status. No attention. She stands up. A flight attendant blocks her. Passengers whisper. Where does she think she's going? The boy's screams suddenly weaken. His lips start to change color. The cabin freezes. This isn't a tantrum anymore. The billionaire turns to the girl everyone dismissed and whispers, "Can you help him?" She kneels. No permission. No degree. Just knowledge and calm. 10 seconds later, the screaming stops. The plane goes silent. Speech balloon, would you have trusted her? Fire like if quiet people deserve more respect. Repeat button, share this. Someone needs to hear it. Bell subscribe because what happens next changes everything. Houston George Bush Intercontinental Airport never really slept. ID only breathed slower at dawn. At 5:47 a.m., Gate 23 was already awake. Lights humming, polished floors reflecting tired faces. The smell of burnt coffee drifting through recycled air. Business travelers checked watches. Parents wrangled children. Screens blinked with destinations that sounded important. Boston, New York, Chicago. At the far end of the boarding line stood Amelia Ward. She was 12 years old, small for her age, swallowed by a pale blue dress that had been washed too many times to hold its original color. Her sneakers were clean but worn, the soles thinning at the heel. A canvas backpack hung from her shoulders. It seems reinforced with careful stitches. Repairs done by someone who couldn't afford replacements. Inside, that bag were things no one would guess. But no one asked. The gate agent scanned the crowd, her eyes sliding past Amelia the way people's eyes often did. Quickly, unconsciously, as if the girl occupied space without registering as presence. First-class boarding, the agent announced. A few passengers stepped forward. Then Amelia did. The agent's scanner beeped, and then stopped. The woman frowned, looking down at the boarding pass, then up at Amelia, then back at the screen. Her eyebrows lifted. "First class?" she asked slowly, like the word itself needed verification. "Yes, ma'am," Amelia said. Her voice was quiet but steady. The agent tilted her head. "Are you traveling with an adult?" "No, ma'am." A pause. "I have my unaccompanied minor paperwork." Amelia reached into her backpack and pulled out a neatly organized folder. Everything inside was straight, labeled, signed. The agent flipped through it, her mouth tightening. She didn't say what she was thinking, but Amelia saw it anyway. This doesn't seem right. Behind them, the line shifted. Someone sighed loudly. A man checked his phone. The agent glanced again at the boarding pass. "Go ahead," she said finally. "You can board." Amelia nodded. "Thank you." She didn't smile. She never did in moments like this. First class was a different world. The lighting softened immediately. Leather seats gleamed. The air smelled like citrus wipes and money. There were only 8 seats total, wide, private, designed to make people forget that everyone else existed behind a thin curtain. Amelia walked down the aisle slowly, her backpack brushing against her legs. Eyes followed her. A white businessman in seat 1A glanced at her, then quickly away, as if looking too long might invite a conversation he didn't want. An elderly woman in 3C clutched her purse tighter, without realizing she'd done it. Amelia pretended not to notice. She found her seat, 2B window, and sat down carefully, placing her backpack under the seat in front of her like it was fragile. From it, she pulled out a tablet and opened a document already highlighted in multiple colors. Advances in detecting acute distress responses in pediatric patients. Her finger scrolled slowly. Thoughtfully, outside the window, the plane waited. 10 minutes later, irritation arrived. It came in the form of a sound. Sharp, piercing, uncontrolled. A child's scream, raw and relentless, cut through the calm cabin like glass breaking. Some passengers flinched. Others groaned. The businessman in one muttered, "Unbelievable." The scream didn't stop. It rose and fell, not in tantrum rhythm, but in something stranger, uneven, desperate. The sound vibrated to the cabin walls, made worse by the enclosed space. Amelia's eyes lifted from her tablet. She didn't look annoyed. She looked alert. The scream continued. Then footsteps. Heavy, confident, important. A man entered first class with the unmistakable presence of someone used to being noticed. He wore a tailored charcoal suit, his movements precise, his posture upright like gravity worked differently for him. Whispers followed instantly. That's him. King Porter, the tech billionaire. King Porter didn't acknowledge them. In his arms was a boy, around 8 years old, thrashing, fists clenched, face red, eyes wild. "Finn!" King said sharply. "Stop it." Finn didn't. His scream cracked, dipped, surged again. His legs kicked against his father's side, his breathing jagged. King's jaw tightened. "Unbelievable," he muttered, already embarrassed. "Absolutely unbelievable." He stopped at seat 2A, and then he saw her. The girl, small, quiet, black, sitting by the window. King Porter's expression froze for half a second, just long enough for something sour to pass through his eyes. He turned to the flight attendant who had hurried over. "There's been a mistake," he said flatly. "That seat is first class." The attendant glanced at Amelia's boarding pass on her tablet. "She's assigned to 2B, sir." King looked back at Amelia like she was a stain someone had missed. "This seat isn't for people like you," he said. The cabin went still. Amelia looked up slowly. "Yes, sir," she said. "This is my seat." King let out a short, humorless laugh. "Don't insult me." "I'm not," Amelia replied. His eyes flicked to her clothes, her shoes, the backpack. "Where are your parents?" "My mother is working," Amelia said. "My father passed away." King exhaled sharply through his nose. "So you're alone?" "Yes, sir." "In first class?" "Yes, sir." The disbelief in his voice turned sharp. "How convenient." Finn screamed louder. King shifted the boy, irritated now more by the attention than the noise itself. "Flight attendant," he snapped. "Fix this. I don't want distractions." The attendant hesitated. She looked at Amelia, then at King, then at the growing number of eyes watching. "Sir, her ticket is valid." "Then your system is broken." King cut in. "Because this doesn't make sense." Amelia sat very still. She didn't defend herself. She didn't cry. She watched Finn, not his face, his hands. They were clenched too tightly. His fingers trembled. His breathing wasn't steady. It was jagged, shallow, wrong. The scream wasn't anger. It was fear. Amelia's fingers curled slightly in her lap. King Porter didn't see any of this. He saw a disruption, an inconvenience, a girl who didn't belong. The businessman in 1A shifted uncomfortably. Someone whispered, "This is awkward." Finn's scream hit a new pitch, then stuttered. Amelia's eyes sharpened. King finally sat down, annoyed, bouncing his leg impatiently. "This flight is going to be a nightmare," he muttered. The cabin waited. No judge, no jury, only assumptions, and the quiet girl by the window, carrying more than anyone imagined. King Porter leaned closer, his voice low and certain. "This seat isn't for people like you." Amelia met his gaze and said nothing. "Speech balloon, have you ever been judged before you even spoke? Fire stay with the story. Everything is about to change." The scream didn't fade. It didn't soften with time or comfort or distraction. It didn't turn into the tired whimper people expected from a spoiled child who hadn't gotten his way. Instead, it filled the cabin. It bounced off the curved walls of first class, slipped under the thin curtain separating privilege from economy, and spread like a contagion, tightening shoulders, shortening tempers, dragging irritation out of everyone it touched. Finn Porter screamed like something inside him was wrong. But no one called it that. They called it annoying. "Is he serious?" the businessman in 1A muttered, pressing a finger into his ear as if that might make the sound disappear. The elderly woman 2 rows back leaned forward. "Can't you do something about that?" She asked no one in particular, her voice sharp with offense. "Some of us paid for peace." A younger man near the aisle scoffed. This is why kids shouldn't be allowed up here. King Porter heard every word, and each one landed like an accusation. His jaw clenched so tightly a muscle jumped near his temple. He shifted Finn again, bouncing him harder this time, his movements quick and impatient. "Stop," he hissed under his breath. "Finn, stop it." Finn didn't. His small body jerked against his father's chest, stiffening, then arching back unnaturally. His hands clenched into fists so tight the knuckles turned pale, then flush red. His breathing hitched short, shallow pulls of air followed by long, strangled cries that seemed to tear out of him. King felt eyes on him. That was what bothered him most. Not the scream. The attention. "This is ridiculous," King snapped, raising his voice now. "I need this handled." A flight attendant hurried over. Her name tag read Jessica. She looked young, tired, unprepared for a billionaire's fury at 30,000 feet. "Sir, we're so sorry," she said quickly. "Children sometimes." "This isn't sometimes." King cut in. "I'm being disrupted. Everyone is being disrupted. Do something." Jessica glanced at Finn, then at King, then at the passengers, watching openly now. "Would you like some juice?" she offered. "Or maybe a toy?" King stared at her like she'd suggested something offensive. "Do I look like I'm flying economy?" Jessica flushed. "I just meant." "I don't care what you meant," King said. "Make it stop?" The scream rose again, higher this time, sharper, breaking at the edges like glass under pressure. Someone groaned loudly. Another passenger turned, voice hard. "If you can't control your kid, maybe you shouldn't be flying first class." King's head snapped up. "Excuse me?" "Just saying," the man replied. "We didn't pay to listen to this." The irony went unnoticed. Finn's scream fractured again, this time ending in a strained gasp. His chest fluttered unevenly, his shoulders jerking with each breath. Amelia noticed. She had noticed from the beginning. While everyone else reacted to the sound, she watched the pattern. The rhythm of Finn's breathing wasn't consistent. His cries weren't driven by anger or defiance. There was no pause to inhale deeply, no building frustration followed by release. This was different. She tracked his posture, the way his back arched too rigidly, the way his neck strained forward, the way his hands clenched and unclenched as if his body didn't know what to do with itself. She saw the slight tremor in his legs, the faint bluish tinge starting to creep near his lips. Amelia lowered her tablet without thinking. She leaned forward slightly in her seat, elbows resting on her knees, eyes focused, not curious, not judgmental. Clinical. The businessman in 1A noticed her staring and frowned. "What are you looking at?" Amelia didn't answer. She wasn't listening to him. She was listening to Finn. King bounced his leg harder now, panic beginning to bleed through his irritation. "Why isn't this working?" he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "Sir," Jessica said carefully, "maybe if we dim the lights." "No," King snapped. "I don't want my son treated like he's broken." Finn screamed again, but the sound wavered. It cracked. The pitch dropped suddenly, like a note played too long on a violin string. Amelia's fingers curled against her palm. That was new. Screams didn't usually weaken unless something else was happening. Passengers shifted uncomfortably now, not just annoyed, but uneasy. "That doesn't sound right," someone whispered. King felt it too. He shook Finn gently. "Hey," he said, his voice tight. "Hey, look at me." Finn didn't. His eyes fluttered briefly, unfocused, then squeezed shut as another thin cry escaped him. Shorter this time, strained, almost hoarse. "Why is he doing that?" King demanded, fear creeping into his tone despite himself. "Why isn't he stopping?" Jessica hesitated. "Sir, has he been ill today?" "No," King said sharply. "He's fine. He's just sensitive." Sensitive. The word floated uselessly in the air. Amelia shifted in her seat. She raised her hand slightly. Not high, not demanding attention. Just enough. Jessica noticed. "Yes, miss?" she asked, distracted. Amelia opened her mouth, then closed it again. She wasn't sure yet. Not enough data. Finn's scream cut off abruptly. The The silence that followed was worse. For half a second, no one spoke. Finn's mouth opened, but the sound that came out wasn't a scream. It was a thin, panic whimper, weak, breathless. King froze. "Finn," he said, shaking his son a little harder now. "Finn, answer me." Finn's head lolled slightly against his shoulder. A murmur rippled through the cabin. "That's not good." "Oh my God. Is he?" Jessica's face drained of color. "Sir, I'm going to need a call for medical assistance." "Do it," King said, his voice cracking now. "Do it now." She grabbed the intercom. "Is there a doctor on board? A nurse? Anyone with medical training?" People looked around. No one moved. Amelia stood. Not quickly. Not dramatically. She simply rose from her seat. Jessica turned, startled. "Miss, please sit down." "He's not screaming because he's spoiled," Amelia said softly. The words weren't loud, but they landed. King turned sharply, eyes blazing. "Who are you?" Amelia didn't look at him. Her eyes were on Finn. "He's in distress," she said, "and his breathing is wrong." King stared at her, disbelief giving way to anger. "Sit down. This doesn't concern you." Amelia hesitated for half a second. Then she shook her head, just once. "It does," she said quietly. Finn's whimper weakened again. His chest fluttered, and for the first time since boarding, the cabin felt afraid. Finn screamed in return. Instead, it faded thin, strained, slipping away like air from a punctured balloon. And Amelia took one step forward. Something is wrong. Would you notice it?" "Right arrow, don't skip. This moment matters." Amelia Ward did not rush. That was the first thing people noticed, and the first thing they misunderstood. She rose from her seat with the same measured calm she used when reading medical journals late at night, when flipping through pages that held answers adults never bothered to seek. No sharp movements. No panic. No performance. Just a quiet decision, made and acted upon. The cabin reacted instantly. A ripple of confusion moved through first class like a sudden draft. Where is she going? Is she allowed up here? A man leaned into the aisle, brows furrowed. Hey, sit down." Jessica, the flight attendant, stepped forward reflexively, arm outstretched. "Miss, you need to return to your seat." Amelia stopped. She didn't flinch at the outstretched arm. She didn't argue or apologize. She simply looked past Jessica, past King Porter, at the boy whose body had gone unnervingly still. Finn Porter lay limp in his father's arms. His chest rose, but barely. His lips were no longer red with screaming. They were pale, fading. "He's not screaming because he's spoiled," Amelia said. Her voice was soft, but it carried. It wasn't loud enough to challenge authority. It wasn't sharp enough to sound disrespectful. It was simply certain. The cabin went quieter. King Porter turned sharply, anger snapping through his fear like a live wire. "What did you just say?" he demanded. Amelia met his gaze for the first time. Up close, King was taller than she expected. His presence filled the space around him, sharpened by years of people stepping aside the moment he entered a room. His suit was flawless. His watch glinted under the cabin lights. He looked like a man used to obedience. "He's not spoiled," Amelia repeated. "He's in pain." A sharp laugh broke from somewhere near the aisle. "Oh, please," someone scoffed. "She thinks she knows better than the parents now?" King's mouth twisted. "Sit down," he said flatly. "You're out of your depth." "I don't think I am," Amelia replied. Jessica's eyes widened. "Miss." Amelia lifted one hand, palm open, not aggressive, not pleading. "Please," she said gently. "Just look at him." No one moved. King tightened his hold on Finn. "I don't need a lecture from a child," he snapped. "Especially not one who doesn't even belong up here." The words landed hard. Amelia absorbed them without visible reaction. She had heard worse. "He's wrong. People said that she's strange. Why does she talk like that? Kids like her don't end up anywhere important." Those words had never stopped her before. She stepped closer. Jessica moved to block her again, fear flashing across her face. "Sir, I'm sorry, but we can't." "Let her," King barked suddenly. The attendant froze. King's eyes were locked on Amelia, his expression a volatile mix of irritation and disbelief. "Go on," he said coldly. "Tell me what you think you know." Amelia didn't smile. She didn't rise to the challenge. She simply looked down at Finn. Up close, the signs were clearer. Too clear. His jaw was clenched. His shoulders were rigid. His hands, those hands, were still balled into fists, knuckles trembling slightly. His breathing came in shallow pulls, each one barely completing itself. Amelia swallowed. "This isn't a tantrum," she said quietly. "Tantrum spike, then crash. They don't fade like this." King scoffed. "You're guessing." "I'm observing," Amelia replied. The businessman in 1A leaned forward to spite himself. "What's the difference?" Amelia answered without looking at him. "When a child screams from anger," she said, "their body stays loose. They have energy to spare. Finn's body is doing the opposite." She gestured subtly. He's stiff. His breathing is irregular. His cry weakened instead of escalating. The cabin listened despite itself. King shook his head. "You're making this worse." "No," Amelia said, ignoring it is. That did it. King's fear finally curdled into something ugly. "Enough," he snapped. "You don't get to lecture me about my own son. Sit down." Amelia hesitated, just for a moment, not because she was afraid of him, but because she was afraid of being wrong. But Finn's chest fluttered again, weaker this time. The doubt evaporated. "I won't," she said. No anger, no challenge, just refusal. The silence that followed was heavy. People stared openly now. Phones hovered uncertainly in hands. Jessica looked between them, torn between protocol and instinct. King's voice dropped, dangerous. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Amelia nodded once. "Yes, sir." "Then you understand why this is inappropriate." "I understand why you're scared," Amelia replied. The words hit harder than an insult. King's face flushed. "I am not scared." Finn made a small sound, thin, fragile, barely there. King's hands tightened. Amelia's gaze softened, but her voice stayed steady. "You should be." That was when Finn went completely silent. Not the brief pause of a breath. Not the calm after a cry. Silence. Total. Absolute. The kind that doesn't belong on a plane full of people. King froze. "Finn," he whispered. No response. Jessica gasped. "Oh my God." The businessman stood halfway out of his seat. "Is he?" King shook Finn gently, then harder. Hey, wake up." Finn's head lolled. A cold wave moved through the cabin. Amelia stepped forward without asking. This time, no one stopped her. Finn made no sound. Not a scream. Not a cry. Nothing. Speech balloon silence. Comfort or danger? Fire comment your answer. The silence was wrong. It wasn't the calm that followed a tantrum. It wasn't the quiet of a child finally soothed by exhaustion. It was hollow, empty in a way that made the air itself feel thicker, harder to breathe. Finn Porter didn't move. For half a second, no one reacted. It was as if the cabin needed permission to understand what it was seeing. Then panic arrived. "Finn!" King said again, louder this time. His voice cracked at the edge. He shook his son, not violently, but with urgency that bordered on desperation. "Finn, look at me." Nothing. Jessica's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God!" The businessman in 1A stood fully now. "Is he breathing?" Someone else whispered. "His lips?" Amelia saw it too. The faint pink had drained from Finn's mouth, replaced by a pale, almost bluish shade that crept in quietly, like dusk settling before anyone noticed the sun was gone. "Call for medical professionals," Jessica said, her voice shaking as she reached for the intercom again. "Is there a doctor on board? A nurse? Anyone, please." Her voice echoed through the cabin. No one answered. People looked at their hands, at their shoes, at the floor. The moment stretched painfully long. King felt the weight of it crush him. His chest tightened, breath coming too fast now. "Someone has to do something," he said, panic leaking through his authority. "This is a plane full of people. How is there no one?" Finn's head lolled against his arm, his body unnaturally still. King's hands trembled. Amelia stepped closer. She didn't touch Finn yet. She didn't assume control. She simply knelt beside King's seat, her movement slow and deliberate, grounding. "He's not getting enough oxygen," she said quietly. King snapped his head toward her. "You don't know that." Amelia looked at him, not with challenge, not with pity, but with focus. His lips are blue. His breathing is shallow. That means his body is struggling. The cabin watched. Phones came out openly now. No more pretending to scroll. No more discreet glances. People recorded because fear had overtaken decorum, and fear wanted proof. Jessica crouched beside them, eyes darting between Finn and Amelia. "What do we do?" she whispered, no longer addressing King as a powerful man, but as a frightened father. King's mouth opened. Nothing came out. This wasn't a boardroom. There were no assistants, no legal teams, no influence that could bend reality back into place. His son was slipping away, and money could not buy air. Amelia shifted closer Finn, her eyes scanning him quickly. Posture, muscle tone, the way his chest barely rose. "Has this happened before?" she asked. King shook his head, panic flooding his face. "He gets overwhelmed sometimes. Sensory stuff, but never like this." Amelia nodded slowly. "Has he been sick recently?" "No." "Any changes today? New routine? Loud environments?" King swallowed. The airport. The crowd. He hates crowds. Amelia closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again, pieces aligned. She reached out, but stopped herself, glancing at King. "May I?" she asked. The question hung in the air. Everyone watched King Porter in that moment. The man who controlled headlines, markets, narratives. The man who had dismissed her, judged her, told her she didn't belong. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Can you help him?" The words barely carried, but they shattered something invisible. Amelia nodded. "Yes," she said, and placed her hands gently on Finn's shoulders. King Porter's voice trembled as he whispered, "Can you help him? Red Heart, would you trust someone everyone dismissed? Bell subscribe. This is where the truth reveals itself." No one told Amelia Ward what to do. That was the first thing that unsettled everyone watching. There were no shouted instructions, no frantic commands, no display meant for cameras or authority. She didn't ask for permission from a room, the airline, or the billionaire kneeling beside her. She simply acted. Amelia shifted closer to Finn, lowering herself fully to the floor so she was eye level with him. The cabin lights hummed softly overhead, suddenly too bright, too harsh. The air felt tight, heavy with held breath. "Too much," she murmured, not to anyone in particular. "Everything is too much for him." King Porter hovered uselessly, hands shaking, his suit wrinkling as he sank to his knees without realizing it. His world, numbers, leverage, power, had collapsed into one unbearable truth. He couldn't help his son. Amelia could. She reached up and gently turned Finn's head slightly to the side, careful not to jostle him. Her touch was firm but reassuring, practice without being rough. "Finn," she said softly, "can you hear me?" No response. She didn't panic. She had expected this. "Okay," she whispered. "That's okay. I'm right here." Jessica hovered nearby, eyes wide. "What were you doing?" Amelia didn't look up, reducing stimulation. She reached up and gently pulled the overhead reading light away from Finn's face, dimming it. Then she motioned for Jessica. "Can you close the window shade?" she asked calmly. Jessica hesitated for only a second before obeying. The cabin darkened slightly. Phones kept recording. But even the people holding them seemed unsure now, hands trembling as they realized they were witnessing something fragile, sacred. Amelia slipped her own hoodie off, thin, worn, soft from years of washing, and wrapped it carefully around Finn's shoulders and torso, creating firm, even pressure. "Compression helps," she explained quietly. "It gives his body boundaries when his senses overload." King stared at her. How do you know this?" Amelia didn't answer. She was counting. "Finn," she said, lowering her voice into a steady rhythm. "Breathe with me." She placed 2 fingers lightly on his chest. In, she said softly. 1, 2, out. 1, 2, 3. The cabin was silent. Not a single cough. Not a whisper. People leaned forward unconsciously, drawn into the rhythm, breathing with her without realizing it. Finn's chest fluttered weakly at first, then hesitated. Amelia didn't rush him. She adjusted her counting, slower now, more deliberate. In 2, 3, out, 2, 3, 4. King's breath matched hers without him noticing. Jessica wiped tears from her eyes. Finn's fingers twitched. Just once. Amelia noticed instantly. That's good, she murmured. That's very good. She gently guided Finn's hands, opening his clenched fists and pressing them softly against his own chest. Feel that, she whispered. That's you. You're here. His breathing shuddered, then steadied. A faint sound escaped his throat. Not a scream, not a cry. A breath. A real one. A collective gasp rippled through the cabin. Oh my God, someone whispered. Amelia didn't look up. She stayed with Finn. Still too loud, she murmured. Too many eyes. She leaned slightly, shielding his face with her body, creating a small, quiet space in the middle of first class, an island of calm surrounded by stunned silence. She continued counting. She didn't explain sensory processing disorder in clinical terms. She didn't lecture. She didn't justify herself. She worked. Finn's color slowly returned, not fully, but enough. The bluish tint faded from his lips. His chest rose and fell more evenly now, no longer fluttering in panicked bursts. King felt his throat close. Finn, he whispered. Finn's eyelids fluttered. Then, slowly, they opened. A sound escaped King that wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite a laugh. He's looking at me, King said, his voice breaking. Amelia smiled slightly. That's good, she said. Don't move too fast. Let him finish. Finn blinked again, eyes glassy but aware now. His gaze drifted, not to his father, but to Amelia. She met his eyes gently. Hi, she said. You're safe. Finn's breathing deepened. His fingers curled weakly into the fabric of her hoodie. The cabin remained frozen. No one dared speak. A man a few rows back lowered his phone slowly, reverently, as if afraid noise alone might undo what he was witnessing. Jessica exhaled shakily. His breathing, it's normalizing. Amelia nodded. Yes. King bowed his head. For the first time in his life, King Porter felt small, not humiliated, not exposed, just small. I didn't see it, he said hoarsely. I didn't see any of it. Amelia glanced at him, not accusing, not kind, just honest. It's easy to miss, she said, when you're used to control. The words landed without cruelty. A moment later, a man stepped forward from the aisle. I'm a pediatric neurologist, he said quietly. I was seated in economy. He knelt beside them, eyes scanning Finn. Then Amelia's work. He looked at the hoodie wrapped just right. The dimmed lights. The child's now steady breathing. He looked up at Amelia, then at King, then at the flight attendant. She did exactly the right thing, he said. The words echoed louder than applause. The doctor's voice carried through the cabin. She did exactly the right thing. Fire if this moment hit you. Tap like now. The silence that followed the doctor's words was different from the silence that had come before. This one wasn't fear. It was disbelief. She did exactly the right thing. The sentence hung in the air like a verdict, final, undeniable, stripping away every excuse the room had leaned on just minutes earlier. People shifted in their seats, suddenly aware of how wrong they had been, of how close they had come to watching a child suffer, because they trusted appearances more than attention. King Porter remained on his knees. He hadn't moved. His suit jacket lay forgotten, wrinkled beneath him. One hand hovered inches from Finn's back, afraid to touch too much, afraid to do anything that might undo the fragile calm now holding his son together. Finn breathed steadily against Amelia's hoodie, eyes half open, unfocused but alive. Alive. The pediatric neurologist glanced around the cabin. He likely experienced acute sensory overload, he said calmly, combined with anxiety-induced hypoxia. If it had continued, he let the sentence trail off. No one asked him to finish it. Jessica swallowed hard. I thought he was just disruptive, someone muttered quietly. The words sounded uglier now. A woman too rose back, cleared her throat. I'm sorry, she said, not to King, but to Amelia. I shouldn't have said what I said. Another voice followed. Yeah, me too. The apologies came softly, awkwardly, like coins dropped into a box that no longer mattered. Amelia didn't respond. She was focused on Finn, counting his breaths one last time to be sure. Only when she was satisfied did she slowly sit back on her heels. The doctor studied her again, curiosity sharpening his gaze. How do you know how to do all that? He asked. The question rippled through the cabin. People leaned in. Phones rose again, not out of fear this time, but hunger. Everyone wanted the explanation that would make sense of the impossible thing they'd just seen. A poor black girl. No credentials. No white coat. Saving a billionaire's son mid-flight. Amelia looked up at the doctor, then at King, then at the rows of people who had judged her before she spoke. I don't have a degree, she said. A murmur followed. King's shoulders stiffened, as if bracing for embarrassment for her or for himself. I know, Amelia continued calmly. I'm not a doctor. She glanced down at her hands, small, steady. My mother cleans hospitals, she said. The room stilled. She works nights. Emergency wards. ICUs. Pediatrics. Amelia's voice never wavered. I used to sit in waiting rooms after school. I'd finish my homework, then read whatever was around. She shrugged slightly. Medical journals. Old textbooks. Flyers taped to walls. The businessman in 1A frowned. You just read them? Amelia nodded. I asked questions. Some nurses answered. Some didn't. She paused. I kept asking. King's throat tightened. My brother had sensory processing disorder. Amelia went on. Severe. Hospitals were the only places that felt familiar to him. Doctors talked around him. Around us. I listened. The neurologist's expression softened. That explains your technique. Amelia shook her head gently. It explains my tension. Silence pressing again, this time heavy with shame. A woman near the aisle wiped her eyes. I thought you were just a kid who didn't belong. Amelia finished for her. The woman nodded, unable to speak. King finally found his voice. You were watching him, he said quietly. From beginning. Yes, Amelia replied. He swallowed, while I was worried about the noise. Amelia met his gaze. That happens. King flinched, not at the words, but at the mercy in them. I should have listened, he said. I should have seen. You saw. Amelia interrupted gently. Just late. That hurt more than anger would have. The doctor stood. She recognized signs many trained professionals miss, he said to the cabin. That doesn't come from luck. King bowed his head. I judged you, he said, voice raw, before you spoke, before I knew anything about you. Amelia nodded once. I know. The admission seemed to unmoor him. I'm sorry, King whispered. Amelia didn't say it's okay. She didn't absolve him. She simply said, Finn needed help. That was all. Jessica stepped back, hands shaking. The captain's been informed, she said. We'll have paramedics meet us when we land. The neurologist nodded. That's wise. Finn shifted slightly, letting out a small, tired sigh. King reached out instinctively this time, and Amelia let him. As King gathered his son carefully into his arms, he noticed something on Finn's wrist. A small silicone band. Muted gray. Compression. King stared at it. That's not fashion, Amelia said quietly. That's a tool. King closed his eyes. A man near the aisle whispered to his seatmate. This is going everywhere. Another voice followed, hushed but urgent. It's already online. Amelia looked up. What do you mean? She asked. The man held up his phone, screen glowing. The video was already playing. A shaky clip of Amelia kneeling on the cabin floor. Finn's screams cutting off. The moment the cabin fell silent, the caption beneath it read, Poor black girl saves billionaire's son mid-flight. Amelia's chest tightened. Someone said softly, almost reverently, "The internet already knows." A glowing phone screen reflected in Amelia's eyes as someone whispered, "The internet already knows." Mobile phone would you want the world watching your worst moment? Speech balloon comment below. By the time the plane touched down, the story no longer belonged to the people who had lived it. It belonged to everyone else. Phones buzzed before the seatbelt sign turned off. Notifications stacked on screens like falling dominoes, shares, reposts, comments multiplying faster than breath. Someone gasped quietly. Someone else whispered a name. King Porter. He sat motionless, Finn asleep against his chest, unaware that the world had already decided what this moment meant. King didn't look at his phone at first. He didn't need to. He could feel it. The invisible shift in the cabin. The way eyes no longer watched him with admiration or envy, but with judgment sharpened by replay. Every raised eyebrow now came with a timestamp. Every glance had an opinion attached. When the cabin door opened and paramedics stepped in, cameras followed. Not professional ones yet, just ordinary hands holding extraordinary power. King finally glanced down. The first headline stared back at him like an accusation. Billionaire father ignores son's medical distress. Stranger steps in. He scrolled. Another. Silence save a life. Who is the girl the world dismissed? Another. Privilege failed. Compassion didn't. King's throat tightened. Across the aisle, Amelia stood calmly, backpack slung over one shoulder. She hadn't checked her phone once. She focused on giving space, on not crowding Finn, on not becoming part of the spectacle. That restraint, quiet, unperformative, felt louder than any headline. As paramedics examined Finn, a reporter's voice floated in from the jet bridge. "Sir, Mr. Porter, can you comment on the incident?" King didn't respond. For the first time in his life, he didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound rehearsed. Finn stirred, blinking slowly. "Dad," he murmured. "I'm here," King said instantly. That was the truth. And it was new. Within an hour, the video crossed borders. Within 2, it crossed narratives. Social media split itself in half. One side crowned Amelia a hero. Clips slowed down, annotated, overlaid with soft music. Threads analyzed her movements like sacred choreography. People called her an angel, a genius, a miracle. The other side questioned everything. Why didn't she speak sooner? Why was she filming? She probably wanted attention. She's not even certified. King watched it all from a private room at the airport medical wing. He didn't comment, didn't post, didn't issue a statement. Every PR instinct he had screamed at him to control the narrative, to get ahead of it, soften the edges, remind the world who he was. But the footage didn't care who he was. It showed who he had been. And that distinction burned. Amelia walked out of the airport through a side exit. No cameras, no security, just a quiet lift ride and the hum of traffic filling the gaps in her thoughts. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it, again and again. When she finally checked it, hours later, alone in her small apartment, the screen lit up like a warning flare. Missed calls, 47 messages, unread unknown numbers, relentless. Her name trended in places she'd never been. Strangers argued about her life as if it were public property. They guessed her age, her background, her intentions. She powered the phone off. Silence felt safer. She sat on her bed and opened her backpack. The same medical literature lay inside, pages dog-eared and annotated. The same tools she'd carried onto plane without ceremony. Nothing about her had changed. The world had just noticed, and she wasn't sure that was a gift. That night, King Porter sat alone in his penthouse office. The city stretched beneath him, glittering, obedient. Normally, this view steadied him. Tonight, it accused him. He replayed the video, not the viral edit, but the raw footage someone had sent him privately. He watched himself dismiss Amelia without listening, watched his son spiral while he argued with reality, watched a young woman kneel where he had stood helpless. He paused the video on one frame. Amelia's face, not triumphant, not angry, focused, human. King leaned back, covering his eyes. For decades, money had answered his problems, smoothed them, made discomfort negotiable. But fear had not negotiated. Fear had ignored his status entirely. And compassion had come from where he least expected it. His phone rang. PR director. He silenced it. Another call. Board member. Silenced. Finally, a message from his assistant. Sir, we need direction. This is escalating. King stared at the words. Then typed back. Cancel tomorrow's press conference. A pause. And King exhaled. I'm making a decision. Morning brought opinion pieces. Some praised King for staying quiet, framing it as restraint. Others tore him apart for the same reason. Silence, they said, was complicity. Apologies demanded. Punishments imagined. The internet wanted resolution. But Amelia didn't give one. She didn't post a video. Didn't tell her side. Didn't monetize the moment. That unsettled people more than anything else. She's wasting the platform, someone tweeted. No, another replied. She's protecting herself. The arguments raged without her, and that absence gave her dignity the world couldn't touch. Late that afternoon, King stood in Finn's room, watching his son build quietly with soft blocks. The room dimmed just enough to soothe. Finn looked up. Is the noise gone? Yes, King said softly. It's gone. Finn smiled faintly and returned his hands. King turned away, heart heavy with gratitude and guilt braided together. He walked into his office and opened a blank document. No logos, no branding, just words. He wrote slowly, not as a billionaire, not as a public figure, as a father. When he finished, he didn't send it to the media. He sent it to one address only. Amelia Ward. Across the city, Amelia powered her phone back on. One new message stood alone at the top. No subject line, just a name. King Porter. She stared at it, then exhaled. Repeat button share this story if compassion matters. The announcement did not come with fanfare. No dramatic press conference. No staged, no carefully curated applause. It arrived quietly, almost reluctantly, buried beneath louder headlines that still argued about blame, race, class, and privilege. Most people missed it the first time it crossed their screens. The Ward Initiative, a new foundation for neurodivergent children and low-income families. No mention of airplanes, no mention of viral videos, no mention of names that would trend. Just purpose. King Porter read the final draft twice before approving it. Then he removed his name from the top. His advisors protested. You need to be visible, one said. This is your redemption arc, another insisted. Public accountability matters. King listened, then shook his head. This isn't about me feeling better, he replied quietly. It's about fewer parents ever feeling as helpless as I did. They didn't know how to argue with that. So instead of the Poor Foundation, it became the Ward Initiative, named not for a benefactor, but for a girl who had never asked to be seen. The initiative funded early diagnosis for neurodivergent children, training for flight crews, teachers, and caregivers, medical access for families who had learned, too early, that money was often the difference between survival and silence. King signed the transfer documents without ceremony. Power, for once, moved without spectacle. The requests came anyway. Interviews, book deals, documentaries, panels titled The Girl Who Changed Everything. Amelia declined them all. Not angrily, not dramatically. Simply, no. She returned to her routine. School, study, volunteering at the same understaffed pediatric clinic she'd grown up visiting. She wore the same clothes, took the same bus, sat in the same quiet corners with her notebooks open. Fame hovered at a distance, confused by her disinterest. People wanted a symbol. Amelia refused to become one. When asked gently by a journalist who caught her outside the clinic why she wouldn't speak publicly, Amelia answered without stopping. Because the work doesn't need my face. It needs consistency. That quote circulated briefly, then vanished beneath louder noise. She preferred it that way. The meeting happened weeks later. Not in a boardroom, not in a penthouse. In a small conference room at a children's hospital. Neutral ground. King arrived alone. No security. No assistance. No cameras. Amelia arrived with a backpack slung over one shoulder, the same one she carried onto the plane. They sat across from each other, the air between them calm, not tense, not charged, just honest. King spoke first. "I didn't ask you here to apologize," he said. Amelia nodded. She hadn't expected one. "I asked you here to listen," he continued. "If you're willing." He told her what the initiative would fund, where the money would go, what gaps it aimed to close. He explained what he didn't know, and what he was still learning. At no point did he frame himself as a hero. At no point did Amelia correct him harshly. When he finished, there was a pause. Then Amelia said, "It's a good start." Not praise, not approval, just truth. King exhaled, relief and humility crossing his face. "I won't attach my name," he added, "ever, if that changes things for you." Amelia looked at him carefully. "It changes things for the children," she said. "That's enough." No apology was demanded. None was needed. Understanding had replaced it. They didn't see King linger in the hospital hallway afterward, watching a father rock his overstimulated child with no judgment in his eyes. They didn't see Amelia kneel beside a nervous nurse and quietly explain how to read small signs others missed. They didn't see King take notes. Or Amelia smile, just once, when she realized the systems she'd learned to navigate alone were finally bending toward others. Change, when real, rarely announces itself. It settles in. Months passed. The ward initiative expanded. Training programs launched quietly across industries that rarely admitted they needed them. Flight crews learned de-escalation through understanding, not force. Teachers received resources that didn't punish difference. Clinics stopped turning families away because of paperwork. King Porter returned to business. But something in him had softened, not weakened, refocused. He spoke less, listened more. And when asked about the initiative in interviews, he redirected the question every time. "This isn't my story," he said. "It never was." Some didn't believe him, but he didn't correct them. On a separate flight months later, Amelia sat by a window, economy class, by choice. A child a few rows ahead stimmied softly, humming under his breath. His mother looked around nervously, bracing for irritation. Amelia met her eyes and smiled. The mother relaxed. The plane descended smoothly. No cameras, no screaming, no silence heavy with judgment. Just normalcy, the kind built quietly, decision by decision. As the wheels touched the runway, Amelia closed her book, not because she'd finished reading, but because, for once, the world had listened. Outside the airport, a banner fluttered briefly in the wind before being taken down for the night. Ward Initiative, pilot program launch. Amelia walked past it without stopping. "Red Heart, do you believe people can truly change?" The cabin did not rush back to noise. That was the first thing Amelia noticed as she returned to her seat. No nervous laughter, no forced chatter, no collective exhale disguised as inconvenience ending. The plane remained quiet, but not the brittle, judgmental silence from before. This silence was different. It held weight. Amelia walked back down the aisle alone. No escort, no applause, no whispered apologies chasing her steps. People shifted, not to stare, not to avoid, but to make space. A man pulled his bag closer to his seat, so she could pass it. A woman angled her knees inward. A teenager lowered his phone without recording. No one said thank you out loud. They didn't need to. Respect had replaced curiosity. Amelia slid into her seat the same way she always had. Carefully, quietly, without claiming ownership of the moment. The tray table was still folded. Her backpack rested beneath the seat. Her book lay open where she'd left it, a folded corner marking her place. Nothing in her space had changed. Everything else had. No one asked for her name, not because it didn't matter, but because, suddenly, it didn't need to be taken. No one leaned over questions, and no one framed her as a miracle or a symbol, and no one tried to extract meaning from her presence. They let her be, and in that restraint was a respect she had rarely been offered before. She had been noticed, and then left alone. Up in first class, Finn Porter slept. His breathing was even now, chest rising and falling in a rhythm so soft it barely disturbed the air around him. The compression hoodie Amelia had wrapped around his shoulders remained in place, his small hands tucked securely against his chest. King sat beside him, unmoving, not guarding, watching, as if afraid that any motion might fracture the calm. His phone buzzed once. He ignored it. For the first time since his son's birth, he allowed stillness to exist without demanding it explain itself. A flight attendant passed, checked Finn's color, nodded once, and continued down the aisle. No announcement followed. No relief speech. The plane did not need reassurance. It had witness enough. Amelia gazed out the window as clouds drifted past in slow, unhurried shapes. The world outside was vast, indifferent, endlessly moving. Inside the cabin, the silence held. But now it was layered, with awareness, humility, and something close to reverence. This was not the silence that erased her. This was the silence that made room. She rested her forehead lightly against the glass. For the first time in a long while, her thoughts were not occupied with preparing to be misunderstood. She didn't need to be ready. She already had been. Her mind drifted, not to the chaos, but to moments before it. The gate agent's hesitation, the glances, the quiet math people did when they looked at her and tried to subtract her worth. Those memories felt distant now, not painful, not erased, just small. They no longer defined the space she occupied. She turned a page in her book, read a paragraph, then close it again, not because she was done learning, but because she no longer needed to retreat into knowledge for protection. The cabin had learned something too. It wasn't applause. It wasn't praise. It wasn't sudden kindness layered thick with guilt. Respect was a man in the aisle seat standing without being asked so she could reach her bag later. It was a woman offering a smile without expectation. It was a child watching her, not with fear or awe, but with curiosity that hadn't yet learned to judge. Respect was absence of intrusion, and it felt safe. The captain's voice broke the silence gently. We'll be beginning our descent shortly. No one groaned. No one rushed. The plane shifted downward, gravity pulling softly, predictably. Amelia buckled her seatbelt. Across the cabin, King did the same, for himself and then gently for Finn. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. Some connections didn't require eye contact. They existed because something irreversible had passed between two people and left them changed. As the plane descended, Amelia looked out one last time. The clouds thinned. Land appeared, solid, textured, real. She felt no urge to mark the moment, no desire to document, no need to hold on to proof. She had been heard. That was enough. The quiet around her wasn't empty. It was full of understanding that hadn't existed before. And she carried it with her, not as a burden, not as a badge, but as confirmation. The plane touched down. Applause didn't follow. It wasn't needed. Amelia remained seated for a moment, watching the world reassemble itself outside the window. Calm, centered, uncelebrated, unignored. Silence is not absence. The IT is presence waiting to be recognized. Fire never underestimate quiet people. Speech balloon, what lesson did this story teach you?